Hey guys, look, there's lots of people in Singapore who are at least as interested and at least as anxious about the election. You know, voting starts in less than 12 hours. So thought we'd give them a sense for what the mood's like back in the US. Mike, what's it like?
It's a very uncertain mood. I think a lot of people, who are obviously on my side of the fence, Biden supporters in the Democratic camp, I would say, are cautiously optimistic, but there's no one that seems to be very overconfident. And I think the message has been, we got to work, we have to turn out our vote, but 90 million, maybe 100 million people have already voted. So the vote has already been turned out in many places. And we just don't have a clear picture of what the result has been. And I think we won't have a clear picture tomorrow night. So I think in Singapore, you're going to be waking up for many days before we actually have a very clear picture of what happens, because some of these states are going to be close and not going to be called. They're going to be contested. There's going to be a lot of litigation. We're going to go into a very muddled period post-election. Now, the exception to that would be if we have a complete Biden landslide, and I don't rule that out. You can kind of hope and pray for that. But if that's the only result that would give us a definitive outcome tomorrow night. Otherwise, I think we're going to be into several days and maybe weeks of trying to decipher what actually happened.
Peter, you're the pessimist of the group. How are you feeling?
Well, I think it's a time of, as Mel Brooks said, high anxiety. I think there is I was on a long call last night with 140 Clinton alumni, and I would say the overall atmosphere was rather tense and subdued. And if you look at the polls that were released today, I mean, there certainly is no reason to be optimistic about overly optimistic. For instance, the Arizona polls ranged from Trump being up by 3 to Biden being up by 6, and everywhere in between, which simply says, boy, it's going to be a tough slog in Arizona. And I think the Pennsylvania numbers and Florida numbers are equally upset. I mean, I think Biden's going to win. I agree with Mike. It's going to be a long election night and days following. I think Biden is going to probably win with 290 some odd electoral votes, but I think it's going to be a tough fight. And I think the country's in for some real challenges.
And Thurgood, how do you see, the atmosphere, and also maybe you want to talk about, the voter intimidation, voter suppression, and what's going on in the courts? And it seems that the Republicans are losing everywhere when they're trying to limit how long votes can be counted, when they can be accepted, and all of those things.
Yeah, that's right. And here in the city, I know Mike and Peter have seen this. The plywood is out in force. The additional riot fencing has been put up around the 16 acres of the White House grounds. And that is all very sobering and disturbing. The litigation issues have been, you're right, percolating, and that only is going to just accelerate. I'm sort of between Peter, the Prince of Darkness, and Mike, the cautious optimist in some respects, but I'm actually further over. I'm of a view that we will know by roughly 1 or 2 a.m. whether this is a Biden blowout, and I think and hope it will be, or whether we're going to be in a prolonged state of uncertainty. I think I am of a mind, though, that by 1 or 2 a.m., we will know that Biden has rounded up the necessary 270. We may not know Pennsylvania for days or weeks, but I still think he's going to pull this off in a way that the recounts, the litigation, if they occur, will be clarification rather than determinative of an outcome.
I've had some conversations with network folks, and they're being very cautious on their projection strategies because they've got burned in the past. And they are only going to project a state if they've got, good data in hand, and there's no reason to believe that anything in the mail-in or absentee ballots would countermand whatever they see happening in the popular vote. That's a very cautious strategy. So it means that, typically, on election night, we sort of say, hey, this, we won this state, we won that state. And that's not going to happen tomorrow night. We're going to be sitting around with a lot of network people yakking at each other and no real results to report, because I think the network's going to be very cautious about projecting. They might project South Dakota, but that's about it.
So Mike, what happens when, so Mike, just follow up. What happens, so Pennsylvania, which doesn't start counting the mail-ins until tomorrow. So what happens when the networks don't declare it, but Trump does? Do the networks cover Trump declaring victory in Pennsylvania? Or do the networks even put him on? What happens?
Well, they'll cover the fact that he's declared victory, but Pennsylvania is going to be one of the long count states. I think. I mean, it's going to be. We might not know until right up until the Electoral College meets in December who won Pennsylvania, and maybe not even then. And then we have all kinds of scenarios in which we don't really have a true Electoral College winner. Going into the time in December when the Electoral College is supposed to meet. That's when we actually elect a president in the United States. It's not tomorrow. It's like in December when the Electoral College meets. But, who knows? I mean, I could go either way on that. I could sort of say it's going to be a Biden blowout and it'll all be clear tomorrow night and the days after. Then the question is, how does Trump react to that? What's going to happen with Trump? Or it could be we in this interregnum, we've got this undecided period in which we're litigating and we're having lots of lawyers throwing suits back and forth, and that would just be a miserable outcome, because then that basically means American democracy has failed to function, and that's a possibility, and the third possibility is that Trump wins re-election easily, and I don't count that as a possibility.
Well, there's 2 points I think that I'd want to focus on. One is, at least we won't be blessed with exit polling, because unlike previous presidential elections, there will be no exit polling because of the extraordinary amount of early vote that will probably end up topping 100 million by when all is said and done. But I think the second thing, we cannot underestimate Trump's desperation. If the window is open, even a crack, for him to declare victory tomorrow night, he will declare it, because that is essential to his legal strategy. To say, wait a minute, I've won it. Possession is 9/10. I've got it. You're trying to take it away from him. When he tries to declare victory prematurely, there will be thousands of people who will take to the street, starting in D.C., and it is not going to be a testament to the American democratic process. And I think I'm very worried about that.
That's the reason a lot of retail establishments and restaurants are boarding up in downtown DC. I mean, Steve, it's unbelievable. You got people putting up plywood all over the restaurants downtown, and because they anticipate that there's going to be civil violence in the aftermath of this election. Which is
let me add this. It's not just DC. It's other, in Philadelphia, there are National Guardsmen out on the street. In Kansas City, they've boarded up the Crown Center, and there are special police in the Plaza area. And I work with flight attendants, and they have been instructed over the next week not to use inner city hotels, downtown hotels in their layovers. They are to stay out of the city and at the airports. So there is a genuine uh, fear that this is not going to go well tomorrow night. And if Trump prematurely tries to grab the crown, uh, it will spark.
So Thurgood, what is the campaign? What does the Biden campaign do in terms of not just lawyering up, but in terms of the overall strategy for dealing with that?
Well, the messaging is going to be key, and the surrogate operation is going to be key. I think the contrast of having Trump parading around as he's prone to do, with well-prepped and a uniform message, but well-prepped surrogates on the Biden side, explaining that this is way premature, this is outlandish, it's in character, but pay no attention to the man playing these games. And we know that at least one network will air it live. In fact, they all will. But I think there's a good chance this is going to have the effect of backfiring, because the bulk of the coverage will feel so compelled after
Good.
so many years of this stuff to put all sorts of disclaimers on and around it that he's gonna make a fool of himself if he tries to play that card. And by the way, big mistake to blurt out that he might do it.
Goody, are you involved in any of the legal efforts that are underway, or do you know much about, how they're assembling the team that's the legal people on the Democratic side that are going to help do litigation? Have you been involved in any of that?
Only a little bit with one of the groups where I've been serving on the board. I'm not working with the primary operation, which Eric Holder is supervising directly for the campaign. Eric Holder and Bob Bauer are doing that, and they've got the teams, as you know, already in place. But there are a number of groups that have been working these issues for the last couple of years in anticipation of this, and I am working with one of them very closely. And they typically send teams out ahead of time, and they will have teams ready to go.
It sounds like nothing. Well, it's definitely nothing that the United States maybe has ever dealt with since 1861, possibly 1876. So give us some reasons for optimism that that we're going to have a smooth-ish transition between now and inauguration.
Well, I can make two cases to this. One is the extraordinary early vote, which, in the state of Texas has exceeded the total number of votes that were cast 4 years ago. And that of the early votes, the projections are that upwards of 30% of the voters have never voted before, were not participants. And those are both just extraordinary numbers and indicate, I think, a part of American democracy, the jolt that it has needed. And hopefully there will be enough positive votes tomorrow to put this country back on track.
But my source of optimism is that baby boomers my age are basically going to have to get out of the way and go off to stage left pretty soon, and younger people are going to take over, and they are more pragmatic and tend to be less hostile and less ideological and much more, forgiving of other people's opinions. And so the vocabulary and tenor of our political debates will change, I think, after this election, because we'll have kind of a new cadre of people who come along and start to make a real difference and push us oldsters out of the way.
Well, I hope that's true, but I am a little concerned about where the Trump crowd is going to take this in terms of the next chapter, and where Fox decides to aim its influential anchors.
Democrats have always underestimated the power of Fox and the power of Sinclair. and we have not figured out how to counteract it. And they, the primetime Fox lineup is not going to accept a Trump defeat tomorrow night.
Now, I'm going to close with, I think it was, I'm going to paraphrase, I think it was Whit Ayers, or a Republican pollster, said that, this is the closest, most anxious 10-point election in the history of the United States. So I'm staying in the optimist camp. Biden's above 50 in every state he needs to win, including Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. That's enough, but you throw in Florida and maybe you pick up one or two more, and then we don't get to the scenario, and hopefully the plywood will get taken down and was just up for cautionary measures, but was not up for necessary measures.
And if that does not happen, we're all coming and descending on you in Singapore.
Yeah.
We'll find for all of our group who haven't met you in person. We'll find places for you. You just gotta get your permits from the government coming from a country with such a high infection rate of COVID.
Right.
Well, we'll set up another call for everybody and have a big group call maybe next week after the election, and hopefully to talk about the transition.
Good.
Steve, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks.